Why did every black kid in the early 2000s eat snacks that, honestly, should have been illegal? I'm talking syrup sandwiches, sugar toast, frozen cups sold by somebody's auntie with no food license. And the wild part? These snacks didn't just disappear, they were erased by history, new rules, and parents who finally decided they were tired of y'all bouncing off the walls. So today we're breaking down the homemade snacks black kids ate, where they came from, why they mattered, and why you probably won't ever see them again. Unless you've got that one uncle still making fried bologna sandwiches at cookouts. Let's start with the sweet stuff. The snacks that were basically legal candy disguised as meals. A syrup sandwich was exactly what it sounds like. White bread, syrup, that's it. That's the whole recipe. But here's what it actually was. Great Depression food technology meeting 1990s. Food desserts meeting rent is due and we're making it work. During the Great Depression, syrup was one of the cheapest sources of calories. A bottle cost almost nothing and lasted weeks. And that knowledge, it got passed down. A syrup sandwich was basically the original dessert crepe. If the crepe was 30 cents and came from a kitchen where the only rule was, make it sweet enough to shut the kids up. And then there was sugar toast. Toast, butter, or margarine if we're being honest. Sugar. Sprinkled on top like you're a French chef, but you're actually 7 years old and unsupervised. Sugar toast was the childhood version of taking a shot of espresso. One bite, and suddenly you were cleaning the whole house with Beyoncé-level confidence. It was fast, it was cheap, it was addictive, and it was the we got food at home starter kit. But the wildest sweet snack? Kool-Aid pickles, also known as red pickles or Koolicles. And yes, that's exactly what it sounds like, pickles. This is pure Mississippi Delta creativity. Corner stores in the South started selling these in the 90s and early 2000s. Not corporate, not franchised, just local black entrepreneurship creating flavors nobody asked for, but everybody wanted. And they're disappearing because store policies changed, fewer people make homemade food to sell in communities, and honestly, the next generation just doesn't understand the vision. Now let's talk about the savory side. The snacks that technically counted as meals if your parents squinted hard enough. Fried bologna. If you know, you already smell this paragraph. You ever see a piece of bologna puff up in the pan like it's trying to escape? Like it's got dreams and ambitions beyond this sandwich? That was the moment you knew lunch was about to hit. That bubble in the middle meant it was cooked right. That was the quality control. Bologna was a staple in black communities because it was cheap, it lasted forever in the fridge, and you could make it work with whatever bread you had. But it declined because of health trends, because processed meat got a bad reputation, because the next generation said, we're not doing this anymore. And then there was government cheese. Let's be clear, government cheese was real. It came from the Reagan-era surplus dairy program. The government had too much cheese, so they gave it to low-income families in massive orange blocks. And that cheese didn't melt. It just softened, like it was considering melting, but ultimately said, nah. But you made it work. Grilled cheese, cheese toast, cheese and crackers. Whatever got you through the week, it's gone now because the program got phased out and regular store cheese got cheap enough to replace it. But anyone who grew up on it, they remember. And if you're from New Orleans, you know about hot sausage. Pork-based, red-colored, spicy enough to make you question your life choices, and kids would eat it on crackers like it was fine dining. Hot sausage on crackers was the broke kid charcuterie board. Classy? No. Delicious? Absolutely. It's disappearing because costs went up, because fewer corner stores make homemade sausage, because the neighborhood economies that supported these foods changed. Real quick, which of these are you guilty of eating? And be honest, the internet is a safe space for questionable childhood snacks. And if you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, hit subscribe. We're documenting the culture they don't teach in school. All right, back to the snacks. Now we're getting into the drinks and frozen snacks, the ones that kept you cool when air conditioning was a luxury. Frozen cups, also called hugs. Quarter waters frozen, or the thing Miss Linda sold on her porch for 50 cents. Kool-Aid, frozen in styrofoam cups, sold by neighborhood moms and aunties who understood capitalism before business school existed. And if you never scraped your tongue on a frozen cup like you were training for the Olympics, Did you even have a childhood? These disappeared because of food safety laws, because fewer neighborhood vendors could operate without licenses, because fewer kids played outside, because the informal economies that held neighborhoods together changed. But the simplest drink? Sugar water, water, sugar, stir. If you were fancy, a splash of lemon. If you weren't, you drank it straight and pretended it was Capri Sun. This came from rationing, from food insecurity, from creative parents who refused to let their kids feel like they were missing out even when money was tight. Young people today will never understand drinking sugar water and thinking it was a Capri Sun that got divorced. It faded because cheap juice became available everywhere, because health awareness increased, because parents decided maybe, just maybe, straight sugar and water wasn't the move. Okay, let's talk about what these snacks really mean. Because this isn't just about nostalgia. This is about history. These foods were tied to economic hardship, to creativity under pressure, to community ties, to the resourcefulness of Black families making something out of nothing. Syrup sandwiches? Great Depression knowledge passed down through generations. Sugar toast? The cheapest way to give kids energy when grocery budgets were tight. Government cheese? Literal federal program acknowledging poverty. These weren't random snacks. They were cultural storytelling. They were your grandmother saying, "We don't have much, but you won't go hungry." They were your neighbor creating a micro-business to feed her family. And their disappearance? That's tied to things both good and bad. Healthier parenting norms meant fewer sugar-based snacks. That's good. But changing food prices, loss of neighborhood gathering spots, kids spending less time outdoors, informal economies being regulated out of existence? That's complicated. These snacks weren't just food. They were childhood, culture, and survival packaged in the cheapest ingredients you could find at Piggly Wiggly. They represent a time when neighborhoods functioned differently, when kids played outside until the streetlights came on, when your neighbor knew your name and would feed you if your parents were working late. And yeah, some of these snacks were objectively terrible for you. Sugar sandwiches? Not a balanced meal, but they came from love, from doing what you could with what you had, from making sure kids felt cared for even when resources were tight. So which snack hit you hardest? Which one made you call your mama and ask, "Remember when?" Drop it in the comments, especially the ones too embarrassing to admit to anyone but the internet. This is a judgment-free zone for questionable childhood nutrition. From syrup sandwiches to frozen cups, these snacks were the blueprint of growing up Black in America from the 70s through the early 2000s. They were cheap, they were chaotic, and honestly, they were some of the best parts of childhood, not because they were gourmet, not because they were healthy, but because they came with stories. Every syrup sandwich came with a grandmother who made you feel special even when times were hard. Every frozen cup came with a neighbor who turned her porch into a business. Every fried bologna sandwich came with a Saturday morning cartoon ritual. These snacks tell the story of Black creativity, Black survival, Black community, Black parents doing everything they could to make sure their kids had childhoods, even when the system made that hard. And even though most of these snacks are gone, the culture that created them, that's still here. It's in the way we share food, in the way we create community, in the way we make something out of nothing and call it tradition. So yeah, you probably won't see government cheese or frozen cups sold on Miss Linda's porch again, but you'll see the same spirit, the same creativity, the same resourcefulness, the same love in every Black kitchen, every family gathering, every community trying to take care of its own. Drop the snack you remember in the comments, the one that only people from your specific neighborhood would understand, the one that sounds insane to everyone else but makes perfect sense to you. And tell me what food story I should break down next. Because Black food history is deep, it's complex, and most of it never makes it to the history books. Subscribe so we can keep telling these stories. Hit the bell. Share this with someone who needs a reminder of where they came from. Because these snacks, they weren't just food, they were us. And that's worth remembering.